He walked into the courtroom wearing a badge he believed made him untouchable. Years of power, years of silence, years of getting away with it. But on this day, one woman sat quietly, holding evidence that could destroy everything he had built. No shouting, no drama, just the truth. And by the time the judge spoke, a career was over. Because he didn't realize one thing. He had brought the wrong woman to court. Everyone in the courthouse knew Officer Daniel Cross. His name carried weight in those halls, whispered with a mix of respect and quiet fear. Tall and broad-shouldered, he wore his sharp blue uniform like armor, every crease perfectly pressed, every badge polished to a shine. His confident walk echoed across the marble floors, the sound of authority itself. Daniel had the kind of presence that made people step aside without being asked. To him, the badge on his chest wasn't just a symbol of duty. It was protection. It was power. And in his mind, it made him untouchable. For years, Daniel had walked into courtrooms with the same calm smirk, never once doubting how things would end. His testimony was rarely questioned. Judges nodded along as he spoke, trusting his word without hesitation. Prosecutors leaned heavily on his reports, knowing that when Daniel Cross took the stand, convictions usually followed. Defendants avoided eye contact with him, already feeling defeated before the judge even spoke. This pattern had repeated itself so many times that Daniel stopped seeing court as a place of judgment. To him, it was just another formality, another step toward a guaranteed win. That morning felt no different. The courthouse buzzed with its usual noise, footsteps, quiet conversations, the shuffle of papers, but Daniel remained calm. He stood outside the courtroom doors, casually adjusting the cuffs of his uniform, his movements slow and unhurried. There was no tension in his posture, no doubt in his expression. He believed this case would be over quickly, just like the others. A short hearing, a few confident answers, and then he'd be back on the street by lunchtime. The woman he had arrested, Maya Brooks, was just another name on his report. Another civilian who had asked too many questions. Another person who didn't know when to stay quiet. In Daniel's eyes, her case wasn't even worth thinking about. He barely remembered her face, only the charge written neatly on the paperwork. To him, she was insignificant, just another small obstacle that would disappear once the judge heard his side of the story. As he waited, Daniel glanced around the hallway, exchanging brief nods with familiar faces. Clerks, attorneys, even other officers looked at him with recognition. This was his world, and he felt completely at home in it. He had no reason to think today would be any different from the dozens of court appearances before it. But what Daniel didn't realize was this. He wasn't just walking into a courtroom that day. He was walking into the moment his carefully built image would begin to crack. A moment where confidence would turn into exposure, where authority would be questioned, where the badge he trusted so deeply would no longer shield him from the truth. And the woman he had underestimated, the one he thought was powerless, forgettable, and easy to silence, was about to become the reason everything changed. Two months earlier, Maya Brooks had been driving home late from work, the city lights blurring softly through her windshield. It had been a long day, the kind that left her shoulders tense and her mind tired, but she wasn't distracted. Her phone rested untouched in the passenger seat. The radio was silent. She stayed within the speed limit, focused only on getting home. The road was nearly empty, and for a moment, the quiet felt comforting. Then flashing red and blue lights filled her rearview mirror. Maya's heart skipped, but she didn't panic. She slowed down, signaled properly, and pulled over to the side of the road. She took a breath, placed both hands on the steering wheel, and waited. She had nothing to hide and no reason to worry. At least, that's what she believed at the time. Officer Daniel Cross approached her car with firm, deliberate steps. His posture was stiff, his expression unreadable. The authority in his presence was immediate, almost heavy. He leaned slightly toward her window and informed her that she had crossed a lane illegally. His tone made it sound less like a claim and more like a final judgment. Maya blinked, surprised. She was certain she hadn't done anything wrong. Very calmly, she asked for clarification. "Officer," she said politely, Could you tell me where that happened? She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply asked a question. When Daniel repeated the accusation, Maya gently followed up, asking if there was any footage or proof to support the claim. She spoke with respect, choosing her words carefully. That was all it took. The air between them changed instantly. Daniel's patience vanished, replaced by irritation. His posture stiffened further, and his voice grew colder. What should have been a routine traffic stop, maybe even a simple warning, suddenly escalated without warning. Maya could feel it happening, but she couldn't stop it. Within minutes, Daniel accused her of being uncooperative. Then came another charge, disorderly conduct. Before Maya could fully understand what was happening, she was asked to step out of the vehicle. The cold click of handcuffs echoed in the quiet night. She was stunned. People passing by slowed their cars, watching as she was led to the patrol vehicle. Maya felt humiliation wash over her, but she stayed composed. She didn't shout. She didn't resist. She didn't even cry. She kept telling herself that the truth would eventually come out. As the patrol car door closed behind her, Maya realized this was no longer just a misunderstanding. This was something else entirely. What Daniel didn't know, what he never bothered to find out, was that Maya wasn't just another civilian he could intimidate into silence. Before her current job, Maya had worked as a legal researcher. She had spent years studying court procedures, analyzing police reports, and reviewing testimony for accuracy. She knew how cases were built and how they fell apart. Sitting in the back of that car, Maya began to replay every second of the encounter in her mind. She noted the exact words used, the timing, the sequence of events. She understood something important in that moment. This wasn't about guilt or innocence. It was about power. And Maya knew exactly how power could be challenged. Not with anger, but with evidence. That night, as the city lights faded behind her, Maya made a quiet decision. She would not let this go. She would not be intimidated. The courtroom was packed on the day of the hearing. Every bench was filled, and even the standing space along the walls was occupied. Low murmurs echoed through the room as people waited, curious about a case that had quietly drawn attention. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, reflecting off the polished wooden panels and giving the room a tense, almost theatrical stillness. Officer Daniel Cross sat at the front, calm and composed. When his name was called, he rose confidently and walked to the stand. This was familiar territory for him. He had done this countless times before. His posture was straight, his expression controlled, and his tone unwavering. As he spoke, he painted a clear, confident picture of the arrest. He described Maya as uncooperative, aggressive, and unwilling to follow instructions. His words flowed smoothly, each sentence carefully shaped, just like all the others he had delivered in courtrooms over the years. To Daniel, this was routine. When he finished, there was a brief pause. Then Maya's attorney stood up. She moved slowly, deliberately, her presence calm but focused. She didn't rush toward the stand, and she didn't raise her voice to command attention. Instead, she let the silence work in her favor. Every eye in the courtroom turned toward her as she adjusted her notes and looked directly at Daniel. "Officer Cross," she began evenly, "are you aware your body camera was active during the arrest?" Daniel nodded confidently. "Yes." The attorney paused, just long enough for the question to sink in. "Then why does the footage show my client calmly seated in her vehicle?" she continued. "Why you stated under oath that she was aggressive and resisting?" The courtroom fell completely silent. No whispers, no movement, just anticipation. The judge nodded toward the screen, and the video began to play. The footage was clear. Maya's hands were visible on the steering wheel. Her voice was steady, respectful. She asked simple questions, never raising her tone. There was no shouting, no resistance, no sign of aggression. The alleged illegal lane change never appeared. Instead, the video showed Officer Cross growing impatient, his words sharp, his commands escalating without clear reason. The contrast between Daniel's testimony and the footage was undeniable. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few heads turned slowly toward Daniel, while others stared at the screen in disbelief. The confidence that had filled the room just minutes earlier began to drain away. replaced by tension and doubt. The judge leaned forward, his expression hardening as the video continued. Daniel felt something unfamiliar in that moment. Pressure. His palms began to sweat as he realized what was happening. The polished story he had delivered so effortlessly was unraveling in front of everyone. Every second of footage chipped away at his credibility. This wasn't just about one arrest anymore. It was about truth versus authority. When the video ended, the silence returned, heavier than before. For the first time in his career, Daniel Cross understood something he had never truly faced before. The courtroom was no longer on his side, and the badge, for once, could not speak for him. Maya didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She didn't even look toward Daniel as the tension in the room thickened. She sat quietly beside her attorney, hands folded, her expression calm and steady. She didn't need to celebrate or react. The truth was already doing the work for her. Every second that passed made it clearer that this case was no longer about one traffic stop. It was about accountability. Her attorney stood again, moving with the same controlled confidence she had shown all morning. One by one, she began presenting evidence that directly contradicted Officer Cross's report. Timestamps from the body camera showed precise moments when Daniel claimed Maya was non-compliant, moments where the footage clearly showed her following instructions. Traffic camera footage from nearby intersections confirmed that no illegal lane change had occurred. An expert analysis explained how standard procedure had been ignored and how the situation escalated unnecessarily. Each detail landed heavily in the courtroom. With every slide on the screen, Daniel's version of events unraveled further. The certainty he once carried now seemed fragile. His earlier confidence felt distant, replaced by an uncomfortable awareness that every word he had spoken was being measured against undeniable proof. Then came the final blow. The attorney paused, allowing the weight of the previous evidence to settle, before introducing internal records from the police department. The screen filled with documented complaints against Officer Cross, complaints that had followed a similar pattern. Civilians questioning his actions, arrests made under vague claims, charges later dropped. Each complaint had been dismissed due to lack of evidence. Until now. Because now, evidence stood clearly on the screen for everyone to see. The judge adjusted his glasses and leaned forward, carefully reviewing the records. His expression was serious, no longer neutral. He looked directly at Daniel, holding his gaze longer than before. "Officer," the judge said firmly, his voice steady but unmistakably stern, "this court takes integrity seriously." The words echoed through the room. In that moment, Maya wasn't just defending herself anymore. This was no longer about clearing her name. That had already begun to happen. She was exposing a pattern of behavior that had gone unchecked for far too long. What had once been dismissed as isolated incidents now formed a clear and troubling picture. Daniel felt the full weight of realization crash down on him. The courtroom no longer felt familiar. The faces around him no longer reflected trust. For the first time, he wasn't seen as an authority. He was seen as a subject of scrutiny. Too late, Daniel understood his mistake. He hadn't brought a powerless woman to court. He had brought someone who understood the system, someone who respected the law enough to demand accountability, someone who knew that truth, when supported by evidence, could dismantle even the strongest illusion of power. He had brought the wrong one, and there was no walking away from that realization. The verdict came swiftly. The judge barely needed time to deliberate. After reviewing the evidence, the testimony, and the clear inconsistencies in Officer Cross's report, the decision was unavoidable. With a firm strike of the gavel, all charges against Maya Brooks were officially dismissed. The words echoed through the courtroom, bringing a quiet sense of relief that felt almost unreal. But the story didn't end there. The judge's expression remained serious as he addressed the court once more. He spoke about responsibility, about the importance of honesty in law enforcement, and about the damage caused when authority is abused. Then he ordered a full internal investigation into Officer Daniel Cross's conduct, not just in this case, but in others connected to his record. The room fell silent again, a different kind of silence this time. Within weeks, the consequences became impossible to ignore. Daniel Cross was placed on suspension pending the outcome of the investigation. His badge, the very symbol he had believed made him untouchable, was taken away. The uniform that once gave him confidence now hung unused, stripped of the power he had relied on for so long. For the first time in his career, Daniel was forced to face the reality that authority without honesty cannot survive scrutiny. Outside the courtroom, Maya walked away quietly. There were no cameras chasing her, no dramatic statements, no celebration. She stepped into the daylight with her head held high, her posture calm and steady. The weight she had carried for months began to lift, not because she had defeated someone, but because the truth had been acknowledged. Maya didn't seek revenge. She didn't demand punishment. She sought accountability, and she got it. The courthouse slowly returned to its usual rhythm. Clerks resumed their routines. Attorneys moved on to the next case. The benches that had been filled with tension were soon occupied by new faces and new stories. On the surface, everything appeared normal again, but something had changed. The lesson from that day lingered in the halls of the courthouse, unspoken but understood. It was a reminder that power without integrity is temporary, that authority must be earned every day through honesty and respect, and that no badge, no title, no uniform places someone above the truth. For some, the case became a quiet example passed along in legal discussions. For others, it became a personal reminder that courage doesn't always come with raised voices or dramatic gestures. Sometimes, courage looks like patience, like preparation, like standing firm and letting evidence speak. And sometimes, the biggest mistake isn't the crime itself. It's underestimating the person brave enough to stand against it, armed not with anger, but with truth. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think, don't forget to like this video. It really helps the channel grow.